My name is Naomi Carter, and I'm 31 years old. I'm a senior project manager at Westbridge Solutions, a role I fought tooth and nail to earn. Every morning, as I sip my black coffee and gaze at the sprawling city skyline from my office, I remind myself that this success was built on relentless hard work. To an outsider, I might seem like the epitome of achievement, but what they don't see is the weight I've carried my entire life. I am the eldest of three. My sisters, Brielle and Camille, are 4 and 6 years younger than me. Our parents, both dedicated professionals, were constantly juggling work and household duties. When Camille was born, Mom turned to me with a smile and said, "Naomi, can you watch her for a little while? I'll be right back." That little while turned into hours, and soon it became the norm. From that day forward, I became the family's built-in babysitter. Playdates and sleepovers were for other kids. My afternoons were spent ensuring my sisters were fed, bathed, and entertained. At 12 years old, I learned to cook because there was no one else to make dinner when our parents worked late. I still remember clumsily chopping onions, blinking back tears, and stirring sauce over the stove, hoping I was doing it right. The praise I received that night, "Naomi, you're such a lifesaver," sealed my fate. From then on, I wasn't just a child. I was their helper, their second mother, their safety net. By 16, I was managing the house as if it were my full-time job. Mornings meant waking up my sisters, packing their lunches, and making sure they got to school. Evenings were a cycle of grocery shopping, cooking, and cleaning, squeezed in between my own homework. My friends stopped inviting me out because they knew the answer was always the same. I can't. I have to take care of Brielle and Camille. One day, I dared to voice a dream of my own. "Mom, I want to try out for the school play." Her brow furrowed. "But Naomi, who will take care of the house?" Dad chimed in. "You're so responsible. We can always count on you." That night, I cried into my pillow, knowing that once again, my dreams would have to wait. Years later, my sacrifice reached new heights. I had saved for months to go on a senior trip to Miami with my friends. The plane ticket was bought, my bags were packed, but the night before my flight, my parents sat me down. "Naomi, we have to leave town for a week," Mom said, avoiding my gaze. "For what?" I asked, my stomach tightening. "Your grandmother isn't well, and we need to be there," Dad explained. I felt a sliver of hope. "Can't Grandpa stay with Brielle and Camille?" Dad sighed. "He's busy with work. We really need you to stay home with them." "But I've been planning this for months," I protested. "I already paid." "We know," Mom interrupted, "but you're the only one we can trust." And just like that, my Miami dream crumbled. I spent the week babysitting while my phone buzzed with pictures from my friends, laughing under the sun. When my parents returned, I found out the truth: they weren't at Grandma's. They had gone on a couple's retreat. "We just needed some time for ourselves," Mom admitted, brushing off my anger like a speck of dust. That was the moment I realized I wasn't their daughter. I was their safety net. College should have been my escape, but even then, the weight of my family followed me. I worked 2 jobs to support myself. Yet when Brielle got into an expensive university, my parents called me with their request. No, their expectation. "She didn't get a scholarship," Mom said, "and we can't afford it on our own." I clenched my phone, knowing where this was going. "Mom, I'm barely making ends meet. But you have a scholarship, right?" Dad pressed. "And you work. Can't you pick up another shift? Brielle can work part-time too," I countered. "She wants to focus on school," Mom said. "This is a big opportunity for her." I took on another job. My days blurred into exhaustion, classes in the morning, shifts at a cafe in the afternoon, bartending at night. My only social life was the chatter of customers ordering coffee or drinks. My only rest was the moments between closing my textbooks and falling asleep. Graduation day arrived. I had fought for that moment, but as I stood there, looking out into the sea of faces, only one familiar figure was present. Dad. "Mom's with Brielle at her university event," he explained, patting my shoulder. "And Camille's busy with finals. You understand, right? You've always been so independent." I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. I had always been the dependable one, and I was exhausted. After graduation, I had hoped for some relief. Maybe, just maybe, I could finally focus on myself. But reality had other plans. I landed my first job at Westbridge Solutions as an entry-level analyst. The salary wasn't great, but it was enough to keep me afloat. I had barely settled in when my phone rang one evening. It was Mom. "Naomi, the first need to talk to you about something important," she said, her voice carrying that familiar tone, the one that meant she was about to ask for something. I sighed, already bracing myself. "What is it, Mom?" "It's Camille," she said, hesitating. "She's struggling in college. The tuition, the books, the dorm fees. It's a lot." My grip on the phone tightened. "Mom, I'm barely managing my own expenses. I know, sweetheart, but Camille doesn't have the kind of discipline you do. She needs support." Discipline. That word again. The thing that had kept me tethered to responsibility since childhood. "I can't afford to send her money," I said firmly. "But you're doing so well at work," Mom argued. "And you don't have kids or a mortgage yet. We just need help for a little while." A little while. I had heard that phrase too many times before. But I knew how this conversation would end before it even started. Despite every fiber of my being screaming at me to say no, I found myself agreeing. That little while turned into years. I kept my head down at work, taking on extra projects and staying late to prove myself. My hard work paid off. I was promoted to project lead within 2 years. But with every step forward, my family found a way to hold me back. When Brielle got married, I was tasked with organizing the wedding. "Naomi, you're so good at planning," Mom had said. "We'd be lost without you." What she meant was, "We can't be bothered, and we know you won't say no." The wedding was beautiful, expensive, but beautiful. I handled everything: venue, catering, guest lists, while juggling my demanding job. 2 weeks before the big day, I was in the middle of a high-stakes client presentation when my phone buzzed nonstop. "Brielle, Naomi, the florist canceled last minute. Help. Mom, sweetheart, we need extra seating for the reception. Can you handle it?" "Camille, OMG. I forgot to book the makeup artist. Can you do it?" By the time the wedding day arrived, I was running on fumes. While Brielle and her bridesmaids sipped champagne and posed for photos, I was outside arguing with the caterers about a missing dessert table. At the reception, Brielle beamed at me. "Naomi, I don't know what I would do without you." I forced a smile. "Of course you don't." The cycle continued. Camille got engaged 2 years later, and I was once again thrust into wedding planning. Meanwhile, my own love life barely existed. Every time I met someone, my responsibilities got in the way. "I'd love to go out this weekend, but I'm helping my sister with her wedding." "Sorry, I can't, family emergency." "You're amazing, but it feels like you don't have time for a relationship." That last one stung the most. It wasn't that I didn't want love. I just never had room for it. One by one, my friends got married, had kids, built lives. I stayed in the background, the dependable one, the problem solver. At family gatherings, I was always the one clearing plates, running errands, making sure everything ran smoothly. No one ever thought to ask if I was happy. Then came the breaking point. It was my 30th birthday. I had taken the day off work, planning a quiet celebration, a spa day, maybe a nice dinner by myself. But my phone rang that morning. It was Mom. "Naomi, happy birthday, sweetheart. Listen, can you do me a favor?" I swallowed my irritation. "What is it, Mom?" "Brielle and her husband are going on a trip this weekend, and they need someone to watch the kids. I told them you wouldn't mind." I stared at the ceiling, my jaw tightening. "Mom, it's my birthday." "Oh, I know. We'll celebrate later. But Brielle really needs this break." "Of course she does." For the first time in my life, I said no. Silence. Then, a soft, disapproving sigh. "Naomi, you've always been the responsible one. You know family comes first." I felt something inside me snap. "No, Mom. I have always come last." I hung up before she could say another word. My heart pounded, my hands shaking as I sat there, absorbing what I had just done. For the rest of the day, I ignored every call, every text. They came in waves: first confusion, then guilt-tripping, then outright frustration. But for once, I didn't care. I wasn't just a support system. I was a person, and I deserved to live my own life. As I lay in bed that night, staring at the ceiling, I felt lighter. Free, even. But I also knew this was only the beginning of a much bigger fight. For the first time in my life, I had said no, and my family did not take it well. Mom left me multiple voicemails, each more guilt-ridden than the last. "Naomi, I don't understand this attitude. Family helps each other. You're being selfish." Then came the messages from Brielle. I can't believe you would do this to me. You know how much I needed this trip. Do you even care? And Camille trying to mediate. Hey, I know they're overreacting, but maybe you could just help out this once. What's the big deal? I deleted all of them. For years, I had been the one sacrificing, bending over backward to make their lives easier. The one time I needed space for myself, I was suddenly the villain. But I wasn't backing down. The days passed in uneasy silence. No calls, no texts. It was the longest my family had ever gone without contacting me. It should have felt freeing, but instead it left me in a strange limbo. I had spent so long being needed that not hearing from them made me feel adrift. Then, a week later, Mom finally reached out. Naomi, we need to talk. I debated ignoring it, but I knew she wouldn't stop. So, I met her for lunch. She arrived in full damage control mode, all soft smiles and motherly concern. I don't want to fight with you, honey, she said, reaching for my hand. I just want to understand. I pulled away. Understand what? That I finally set a boundary? Mom sighed, as if she were dealing with a stubborn child. It's not about boundaries, Naomi. It's about being there for each other. I leaned back in my chair, crossing my arms. Funny how that only seems to apply when you need something from me. She frowned. That's not fair. I let out a humorless laugh. Isn't it? Tell me, Mom, when was the last time anyone in this family asked how I was doing? When was the last time I was included in something that wasn't a responsibility? She opened her mouth, then closed it. Right, I said, shaking my head. You don't even realize it, do you? You all just assume I'll handle things because I always have. But I'm done. I'm tired, and I'm not doing it anymore. Mom's expression hardened. Naomi, we are family. We support each other. No, I support all of you, I corrected. And I don't get anything in return. Silence stretched between us. Then she sighed. I just don't want us to drift apart. I met her gaze. Then maybe you should start treating me like a daughter, not a safety net. She didn't have a response to that. After that conversation, things were different. For the first time in years, my phone wasn't ringing off the hook with requests. No frantic last-minute favors. No expectations to drop everything and handle their problems. It was quiet, unsettlingly so. I had spent so much time wrapped up in my family's needs that I didn't know what to do with myself. Without the constant obligations, my evenings stretched out, empty and unfamiliar. I thought I would feel free. Instead, I felt lost. That was when I realized just how much of my identity had been tied to them. Who was I, if not the fixer? I needed to figure that out. So I started small. I signed up for a yoga class, read books for pleasure instead of stress relief, went out for drinks with coworkers instead of making excuses. And for the first time in years, I let myself live. Then, out of nowhere, came the final test. One evening, as I was leaving the office, my phone rang. Camille. I hesitated before answering. Hello? Naomi, she said, her voice thick with emotion. I need your help. I stiffened. What kind of help? She hesitated. Can we meet? Please? Something in her tone made me say yes. We met at a quiet cafe, and the moment she sat down, I knew something was wrong. Her eyes were red, her hands twisting in her lap. Camille? I asked carefully. She exhaled shakily. It's bad, Naomi. I messed up. She launched into the story. She had gotten engaged to her college boyfriend, Daniel. Mom and Brielle had thrown themselves into wedding planning without consulting Camille on much of anything. But that wasn't even the worst part. Turns out, Daniel had been lying to her. About money. About his job. About everything. She found out 2 days ago that he was thousands of dollars in debt and had been using her credit cards to keep up appearances. I didn't see it, she whispered, eyes filled with shame. I was so caught up in everything that I didn't even notice. I took a deep breath. Have you confronted him? She nodded. He denied it at first. Then he got angry. Said I was overreacting. I clenched my jaw. And Mom? Brielle? She let out a bitter laugh. They think I should still go through with the wedding. They say I can't help him get back on track. I stared at her, stunned. They what? Camille wiped at her eyes. I don't know what to do, Naomi. I'm scared. I don't want to marry him. But Mom keeps saying I'll regret it. That I'm being emotional. My chest ached for her. For years I had been them, the one who never questioned, the one who did what was expected. But I had learned. And now, Camille was drowning in the same expectations. I reached across the table and took her hand. You don't have to marry him, I said firmly. She let out a choked laugh. Tell that to Mom. I will, I promised. But first, what do you want? Camille swallowed hard. I want out, I nodded. Then we get you out. And just like that, the dynamic shifted. For the first time in our lives, my sister needed me not as a problem solver, but as someone who had been through it and could help her out. And I was ready. Camille sat across from me, her hands clenched around her coffee cup like it was the only thing keeping her together. She wanted out. I was determined to help her. We're calling off the wedding, I said, pulling out my phone. She flinched. Just like that? Yes, I said firmly. Unless you suddenly want to marry a liar drowning in debt. Camille hesitated, then shook her head. No, but Mom is going to flip. I exhaled. She always flips when she doesn't get her way. But this is your life. She bit her lip. She'll say I'm being selfish. I leaned forward. Do you hear yourself? You caught your fiancé stealing from you. This isn't about selfishness. It's about self-respect. Her shoulders sagged. You make it sound so easy. It's not, I admitted. But I promise you, staying in a marriage out of fear will be so much worse. She took a deep breath, then nodded. Okay, let's do it. I dialed Mom's number and put the phone on speaker. She picked up on the second ring. Naomi? Oh, thank God, I was just about to call you. We need to discuss Camille's bachelorette party. She's not getting married, Mom, I said flatly. Silence, then a sharp inhale. Excuse me? Camille swallowed hard. Mom, absolutely not, Mom snapped. This wedding is happening. No, I said, my voice cold. It's not. Camille, don't listen to your sister, Mom said urgently. Naomi has always been difficult, but you're different. You understand family responsibility. I clenched my jaw. Family responsibility is not the same as being a doormat. Mom's voice sharpened. You are not ruining this wedding. I looked at Camille. Do you want to marry him? Her voice was small but steady. No. Mom exhaled harshly. Then we'll fix this. We'll sit down with Daniel and sort things out. There's nothing to sort, I said. It's over. You don't get to decide that, Naomi. I felt my anger rise, steady and sure. Neither do you, Mom. The silence stretched. Then she scoffed. I should have known you'd do this. You've always been selfish, Naomi. I laughed, the sound hollow. That's rich coming from you. Camille flinched but didn't back down. Mom, I'm not marrying him. Mom's tone turned icy. Fine, but don't come crying to me when you realize what a mistake you've made. She hung up. Camille stared at the phone, her face pale. She's really mad. I nodded. She'll get over it. And if she doesn't, that's her problem, not yours. Camille let out a shaky breath. I wish I had your strength. I gave her a small smile. You do. You just need to start using it. Canceling the wedding was a mess. Daniel didn't take it well. He called, texted, even showed up at Camille's apartment begging for another chance. He swore he'd pay her back, that it was all a misunderstanding. She didn't budge. Mom, however, was another story. She started a full-scale guilt campaign. Calls, messages, even showing up at Camille's workplace to talk some sense into her. When that didn't work, she turned on me. You poisoned her against us, she accused one night, her voice shaking with anger. No, Mom. She finally saw the truth. I countered. The truth? That family means nothing to you? I sighed. Family isn't supposed to mean losing yourself for other people. She shook her head. You've changed. I finally learned how to say no, I corrected. For the first time, I saw something in her expression I had never seen before, fear. Not fear of losing me, but fear of losing control. I wasn't bending anymore, and she didn't know what to do with that. Months passed. Camille started therapy. She moved into a new apartment, changed her number, and slowly began rebuilding. It wasn't easy, but she was happier, lighter. And me? I was finally living my own life. I took a real vacation, traveled solo for the first time, learned how to enjoy silence without waiting for the next crisis to fix. Then one afternoon, as I was leaving work, my phone rang. Brielle. I debated ignoring it, but something told me to pick up. Naomi, she said, her voice hesitant. Hey. I leaned against my car. Hey. A pause. Then, can we talk? I sighed. What's wrong? She hesitated. I don't know. I miss you. That caught me off guard. You do? She let out a breathy laugh. Yeah. Look, I know we haven't exactly been fair to you, and I'm not calling to make excuses. I I've been thinking a lot. I stayed quiet, letting her continue. Camille told me what happened, and it made me realize something. We never really saw you, did we? A lump formed in my throat. No, you didn't. She exhaled. I don't expect you to forgive me overnight, but I'd like to try. If you'll let me. I swallowed hard. For years, I had been fighting to be seen, to be valued. And now, for the first time, my sister was finally trying. I'd like that, I said. And I meant it. For the first time in my life, Brielle was making an effort. I wasn't sure how to feel about it. The logical part of me said to be cautious. Years of being the family's safety net had taught me that any sudden warmth usually came with strings attached. But another part of me, the tired, lonely part, wanted to believe it was real. So, I agreed to meet her for coffee. She arrived first, already seated when I walked in. A flicker of nervousness crossed her face as I sat down. I wasn't sure you'd come, she admitted. Neither was I said honestly. She nodded, stirring her drink. I deserve that. Silence stretched between us. I watched her carefully, waiting for the usual script, the guilt, the deflection, the excuses. But instead, Brielle just sighed. I owe you an apology, she said, looking me in the eye. A real one. I blinked. Okay, she exhaled. For years, I let you carry everything, and I never questioned it, because it was easier that way. You were always so capable, and Mom made it seem like that was just your role. I never thought about how unfair that was to you. I stared at her, stunned. She gave a small, bitter laugh. You're surprised? Yes. I was too, she admitted. When Camille called off her wedding, I was furious. Not at her, at you, because I knew it was your influence. Mom was furious too, but not for the same reason. She was mad because she was losing control. I was mad because I realized I had no idea who you actually were outside of the sister who always fixed things for us. I swallowed hard. And now? Brielle hesitated. I'm trying to see you. The real you. I wanted to believe her. I really did. But years of emotional exhaustion made me wary. I appreciate that, I said slowly. But words aren't enough, Brielle. You don't just get to acknowledge the damage and walk away feeling better about it. She flinched but nodded. I know. I'm not asking you to forgive me overnight. I want to start over. If you'll let me. I studied her, searching for any sign of manipulation. But all I saw was sincerity. Maybe she really was trying. Maybe, for the first time, she was willing to meet me halfway. I took a deep breath. Okay, we'll start small. A small, tentative smile crossed her face. I'll take it. Brielle and I weren't the only ones shifting. Mom had not taken Camille's canceled wedding well. The guilt trips, the silent treatment, the carefully crafted martyr act, she cycled through them all. But Camille didn't budge, and that was new. Mom called me one evening, her voice tight with frustration. Camille isn't listening to me. She's an adult, Mom. She's confused, she insisted. You're filling her head with all this nonsense about independence. Nonsense? The first repeated, my patience wearing thin. Wanting control over her own life is nonsense. She needs family, Mom snapped. We all do. That's what you don't understand. I let out a short, humorless laugh. No, Mom, I understand perfectly. You only consider it family when it means you get to dictate what we do. But the second we make choices you don't like, suddenly we're being selfish. Her voice wavered. That's not fair. I softened. Maybe not, but it's true. A long silence stretched between us. Then, in a voice I had never heard from her before, she asked, Do you hate me, Naomi? That question hit me harder than I expected. I closed my eyes, exhaling slowly. No, Mom. I don't hate you. I just need you to let me live. She didn't respond right away. And for the first time, I didn't fill the silence for her. Finally, she whispered, I don't know how to do that. I swallowed the lump in my throat. Then maybe it's time you figure it out. The months that followed were different. Camille and I grew closer. She was rebuilding her life, making decisions for herself instead of waiting for permission. Brielle and I took things slowly. She still had her moments. Habits were hard to break, but she was trying. And, Mom? She struggled. She reached out less, but when she did, it wasn't always to ask for something. Sometimes, it was just to check in. Sometimes, she still slipped into old patterns, but I was quicker to call her out. And surprisingly, she listened. As for me, I was finally living. I took the promotion I had been hesitating on, knowing it would require me to relocate. I traveled. I built friendships outside of my family's shadow. And one evening, sitting on my balcony with a glass of wine, I realized something. For the first time in my life, I wasn't waiting for someone to need me. I wasn't waiting for the next crisis, the next favor, the next sacrifice. I was just existing, and it felt good. One day, months later, my phone rang. It was Mom. I hesitated before answering. "Hey," I said cautiously. "Hey, sweetheart." Her voice was softer than usual. "I was wondering if you'd like to come for dinner this Sunday. No obligations, no expectations, just dinner." I blinked. "Just dinner?" She let out a small, nervous laugh. "I'm trying." Something inside me loosened. Maybe we'd never be perfect. Maybe she'd never fully change. But at least she was trying. And this time, I had a choice. I smiled. "I'll think about it, Mom." And for the first time, I meant it. For the first time in my life, I had a choice. Not an obligation, not an expectation, just a simple choice. And I took my time with it. The invitation to dinner sat in the back of my mind for days. Old instincts told me to say yes, to fall back into the rhythm of my family's needs. But I wasn't that person anymore. I didn't owe anyone my presence. So, when Sunday rolled around, I did something I never would have before. I listened to what I wanted, and what I wanted was peace. Instead of going to dinner, I spent the evening with people who had never asked me to prove my worth. Friends who valued me, not for what I could do for them, but simply for who I was. It felt strange at first. I had spent so long tied to my family's needs that the idea of building something separate felt almost like betrayal. But as laughter filled the air, as stories and jokes flowed freely, I realized something. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Not duty, not guilt, just connection. And for the first time, I didn't feel lonely. I felt free. Mom must have noticed my absence because the next morning she called. "You didn't come," she said, her voice unreadable. "I know," I said calmly. I wasn't ready. She was quiet for a long moment. Then, "Are you ever going to be?" I sighed. "I don't know, Mom. But if I do, it'll be because I want to. Not because I feel obligated." Another silence. Then, a quiet. "I understand." For once, I believed her. Months passed. The space between me and my family remained, but it was no longer a battlefield. Camille thrived in her newfound independence. She started a new job, met new people, and slowly unraveled the years of conditioning that had taught her to put herself last. Brielle and I kept rebuilding piece by piece. It wasn't perfect, but it was real. And Mom, she struggled the most. Change was hard for her, letting go of control even harder. But little by little, she tried. And that was enough. One evening, as I sat on my balcony, a familiar number popped up on my screen. It was Camille. I answered with a smile. Hey, she said, excitement bubbling in her voice. "I have news." "Oh?" She took a deep breath. "I'm moving." I sat up straighter. "What? Where?" "Seattle," she said, laughing nervously. "I got a job offer. A good one." Pride swelled in my chest. "Camille, that's amazing." "I know," she said, voice softer. "And it's because of you." I shook my head. "No, it's because of you," she exhaled. "Maybe, but I wouldn't have had the courage to do it if you hadn't shown me how." Tears pricked my eyes. For so long, I had been trapped in a cycle of sacrifice. But now, for the first time, I had broken free, and in doing so, I had given Camille the courage to do the same. "I'm proud of you," I said, meaning every word. She sniffed. "I'm proud of you." The next morning, as I sipped my coffee and watched the city wake up, I thought about everything that had led me here. The years of sacrifice, the quiet resentment, the exhaustion of always being needed, never chosen. But I wasn't that person anymore. I had chosen myself. And for the first time in my life, I was truly, finally, free. Story 2. I never thought I would hear my mother discount my entire life in one sentence. Yet there it was, drifting through the kitchen doorway like toxic gas while I stood still, holding a dish towel and gasping for air. "Oh," my mother purred into the phone, her voice brimming with the sweet tone she used for important discussions. "Don't worry about Maya. We just hired someone to assist us around here. Clara's violin performance must be our first priority. She could get her big break. My name is Maya, and I am 22 years old." I have been my family's pillar of support and their shadow at the same time. As the oldest of 5 sisters, I prepared more dinners than I could remember and changed more diapers than my mother. However, it was strange to hear that I was only someone we hired to assist. That was not the same. Through the threshold, my knuckles whitened as I clutched the kitchen counter. As she talked about my 10-year-old sister's impending performance, I could see my mother pacing in her high-end shoes and making impassioned gestures. The golden kid is Clara, the person who received private instruction, while I worked part-time jobs to support our family. Mother went on, the dress alone is very expensive, but according to Robert, it's well worth the money. Evelyn, you should watch her light up on stage. Unlike me, she will be someone exceptional. From upstairs, the sound of violin scales seemed to trickle down. Clara is getting better. As usual. The sounds pricked my flesh like little needles. At 12, I had stopped taking piano lessons so that Clara could begin hers. The big sister is you, Mom said, so you get it, don't you? I had spent too much time understanding. In my pocket, my phone buzzed. My younger sisters, Olivia or Sophia, will most likely send me another text wondering when supper will be ready. Although they were young enough to continue the family tradition, they were mature enough to understand better. They occupied the area between my shadows and Clara's lighting when they were 16 and 14. Photos will be necessary, of course. Mom chuckled into the phone. Ones that are professional. We can't have anything less for our young star, of course. I pondered the pile of college pamphlets concealed beneath my mattress, the ones I had been surreptitiously gathering, the acceptance letter from State University that had arrived yesterday, the tiny savings account I had amassed over years of babysitting and weekend work that my parents were unaware of, and more. I heard my father's heavy footsteps coming home from work early, most likely to drop Clara off at her practice. I waited for him to arrive, expecting supper to be ready, for about 30 seconds. That's when I decided what to do. I took out my phone and navigated to a number that I had never before dared to contact. At a family funeral years ago, my aunt gave me my grandma Eleanor's contact information. Long ago, for reasons she never revealed, my mother severed her relationship with her own mother. I typed with trembling fingers, "Hello, grandmother. My name is Maya Eleanor. The first needs someone to chat to, even though we have never met. Someone who could relate." I was reminded about the casserole in the oven by the beep of the kitchen timer. When Father tried to unlock the door upstairs, his keys jingled. Clara restarted the scale after striking the incorrect note. I sent it. After that, I put on my oven mitts, straightened my back, and got ready to serve another delicious family meal. Perhaps one of my last, since I realized then that I was more than simply a helper they had recruited, and they would all soon realize that. I couldn't check my phone yet, but it vibrated nearly instantly with an answer. I felt something amazing and dangerous unfolding in my chest for the first time in years. But I had to finish this supper first in order to continue playing my part. I hope. Everything was altered by Grandma Eleanor's reaction, following 3 days of late-night phone calls and covert text messaging. She asked me to meet her in a little downtown cafe. I informed my mother that I was taking on more work hours. As she assisted Clara in practicing her scales, she hardly acknowledged that it was a falsehood. When I entered the cafe, it was silent. Only a handful of coffee-drinking morning stragglers. And there she was, my grandma, elegantly dressed in a deep blue jacket, sitting upright with her back to a corner booth. Over the years, my mother had portrayed her as a villain, although she didn't look anything like that. "Maya," she replied, getting up to give me a hug. Her scent made me think of gardenias. "You resemble my mother exactly, except from your age." Before I could stop them, the words escaped. Eleanor turned wistful and smiled. "Therefore, we're diving right in." Excellent. Honest interactions were always my preference. She motioned me to take a seat, described the acceptance letter to me. I almost dropped my glass of water. "How did you?" "After your initial communication, I called State University. On the board, I still have pals." Her actions were exact as she stirred her tea, pulled the scholarship offer. "However, you haven't yet informed your parents, have you?" Sophia texted me before I could reply, and my phone chimed. "You're where?" Mom is going crazy. The dress fitting for Clara was rescheduled. "I'll guess," Eleanor said as she observed my face. "Emergency in the family." I displayed the text to her. One more arrived. "If you don't show up, she's threatening to take away Clara's violin time." "Traditional," Eleanor whispered. Marjorie, controlling one child with the help of another. I should leave, I said as I reached for my handbag. Clara's practice time cannot be lost. She's about to have that recital. Take a seat, Maya. Eleanor spoke in a soft yet firm tone. Let's talk about what you want for once. My phone kept buzzing. I turned it face down on the table. I can help you, she continued. Not just with college. I can help you build a life that's yours. She reached into her bag and pulled out an envelope. This is for you. A trust fund I set up when you were born. Your mother never knew about it. My hands shook as I opened it. The number on the statement made my vision blur. But why? Because I saw this coming, she said simply. I saw how Marjorie was already playing favorites with you girls. History repeating itself. She took a sip of tea. She did the same thing to your Aunt Catherine before cutting me out of her life. I had an aunt. Mother had never mentioned a sister. The cafe door chimed. I looked up and froze. Olivia stood there, her art portfolio clutched to her chest, eyes wide with recognition. I followed you. She blurted out, I'm sorry, but I suspected something was going on, and she stared at Eleanor. You're our granny. Eleanor's face relaxed. Hello, Olivia. Your artwork is great, by the way. I saw your painting in the youth gallery downtown last month. Olivia's cheeks reddened. You witnessed that? Mom and Dad didn't even go to the opening. Of course they didn't, I mumbled. My phone buzzed again. Mother, this time, Clara's special day is being ruined by your selfishness. Now come home. Olivia straightened her shoulders after reading the message over my shoulder. Grandma Eleanor and you are hosting me here. In my chest, something changed. Perhaps pride or comfort. I was no longer alone. Eleanor gave us both a grin. So, should we get a genuine breakfast and discuss your futures? Both of them, when we sat down to speak. I could feel the years of duty beginning to crumble, but there was something more powerful behind that weight. The cornerstone of a brand new family structure based on choice, rather than obligation. The buzzing on my phone persisted, but I let it ring for the first time in my life. As soon as I entered our home, I knew that everything was going to blow apart. On the kitchen counter, ripped open, was the State University admittance letter. Father's face had that frightening stillness I'd come to fear over the years, while Mother stood by the window with her back stiff. When did you intend to inform us? Mother's tone was uncannily serene. In order to purchase time, I cautiously put my luggage down. I was holding out for the ideal opportunity. The appropriate time. The letter was taken up by Father, as if you had already deserted your family. After you had betrayed all of the things we had given up for you. Given up. It was a stinging word. What specifically have you given up for me? I turned as I heard a quick intake of breath coming from the doorway, with those calculating eyes that gave the impression that she was much older than 10. Clara stood there in her new recital outfit, watching. Are you heading out? Her voice trembled precisely as she asked. But my huge show. You said you would assist me with my practice. Sweetheart, don't worry. Mom hurried to console her. I'm not going anywhere. She is aware of her obligations. My obligations? I felt something crack within of me. I thought the employees weren't getting paid enough. It was like sacrificing all of my dreams to give Clara her chance to shine. That's sufficient. Father struck the counter with his fist. That's not how you'll talk about your sister. Why not? The only one who matters is her. With trembling fingers, I took out my phone and played the tape from that day. The kitchen echoed with Mother's words. We just hired someone to assist us around here. The mother's face lost its color. Did you record me? I didn't have to. It's ingrained in my mind. I looked across at Clara. I recall sacrificing everything for you, including my summer camp funds, art classes, and piano lessons. Clara's bottom lip trembled. When she desired attention, this was her hallmark move. But Olivia came up behind her before she could say anything. She's right, Olivia muttered. We are all aware of its truth. Mom, Olivia, proceed to your room. You don't care about this. In fact, it affects us all. We're sick of acting like it doesn't. And Sophia emerged from behind Olivia. Father's expression grew gloomy. Isn't that woman the subject of this? You've been hearing rubbish from your granny. Grandma Eleanor was honest with me. I retaliated, asking why you excluded Aunt Catherine, Mother. About how you're treating me the same way you treated your sister. The ensuing hush was deafening. Clara even paused her act, appearing perplexed. You don't have any right, Mom muttered. You're not understanding. I completely get it. I took the trust fund documents out of my bag, and I'm done requesting permission. I'm attending college. I am constructing my own life. Should you leave through that door? The tone of father's voice was too low. Don't count on returning. I glanced at my sisters. Olivia's resolute expression, Clara's calculating gaze, and Sophia's silent encouragement. I'm not going to leave them, I said. I understand the true meaning of family. Unlike you, it began with your ungrateful mother. However, I interrupted her. I'm grateful, actually. You've taught me exactly what kind of parent I never want to be. I grabbed my pre-packed bag from behind the couch. I'd known this moment was coming and headed for the door. Olivia and Sophia moved to follow me, but I shook my head slightly. They needed to stay for now. We had a plan. Maya, Clara called out, her voice suddenly stripped of its usual manipulation. For a moment, she sounded genuinely scared. Don't go. I paused at the door, looking back at my youngest sister. When you're ready to be real with me, Clara, you know how to reach me. Until then, enjoy your spotlight. The door closed behind me with a quiet click, but it might as well have been a thunderclap. As I walked to the car where Grandma Eleanor waited, I could hear Mother's sobs and Father's angry voice. But for the first time in my life, those sounds didn't control me. I was finally writing my own story. College should have felt like freedom. Instead, my dorm room walls seemed to close in a little more each day. 3 months into my first semester, and the silence from home was deafening. Only covert late-night phone conversations with Olivia and Sophia might break it. A new housekeeper has been recruited. During one such call, Olivia muttered, "Mom keeps introducing me as a member of the family. When she says that, you should watch how she examines your old pictures." As I watched kids traverse the courtyard below, I leaned my forehead against the cool window pane. Olivia was hesitant, but Clara is still portraying the ideal daughter. There's a change. She is always inquiring about you, while the parents are not present. I jumped when I heard a knock on my door. I must leave. I hung up the phone and murmured. Katie, my roommate, held out 2 coffee cups as if they were peace gifts. Downstairs is where your granny is. Eleanor wasn't what I anticipated today. She was frowning as she studied the bulletin board when I arrived in the foyer. She greeted him by saying, "These student activities are dreadfully dull. Grab your coat. We're going to that eatery for lunch off campus." She held off on unleashing her bomb until her supper came. "Yesterday, your mom visited me." My force struck the plate with a clatter. What? If your education was being paid for by me, what did she want to know? Eleanor had keen eyes. She has also been inquiring about your Aunt Catherine. Was there anything you told her that she didn't already know? Deep inside, Eleanor took a drink of water, but I'm not here for that. I received a call this morning from your sister, Sophia. My heart stopped beating. Is she all right? All right. However, next week is Clara's violin concert. Before I leave them, the one you helped her get ready for before she let the words linger. Even I was astonished by the vitriol in my voice. Eleanor corrected you before you made your own decision. Clara is now reluctant to perform, though, claims that without you, it doesn't seem right. There. I gave a gruff laugh. One more trick. Most likely, she's just anxious. Additionally, she has been slumbering in your bed. My barriers were breached by Eleanor's comments. Last night, Sophia discovered her there, holding your old music books. The picture struck me like a punch to the body. After our Aunt Catherine left, I recalled discovering Clara engaged in the same activity. However, I was unaware of Catherine's identity or the reason behind her disappearance at the time. A text message from an unidentified number rang on my phone. "You're the only one who knows how to mend the middle section, and I keep messing it up, even though I know I should despise you now. You see?" Eleanor remarked quietly. "She's just a child, a youngster who is beginning to understand that being the favorite has its own form of imprisonment. Don't." I got up suddenly. "I'm finally free. Don't make me feel bad about it." "Shame." Eleanor's eyebrow went up. "No, sweetheart. I propose that you now possess authority. Actual power. What are you going to do with it, I wonder?" There was another text. "Olivia this time. If Clara doesn't change her mind, her mother is considering sending her to boarding school. Please assist." There was something fresh behind the old yearning to save the day and make things right. Understanding that lending a hand didn't have to entail giving up. "I must think," I informed Eleanor. With comprehension in her eyes, she nodded. "Just keep it in mind. Liberation is preferable for everyone, even though revenge may feel pleasant." I took a while to reply to Clara's SMS after returning to my dorm room. The issue isn't with the middle part. You're playing it well, but flawless doesn't equate to genuine. After that, I opened my laptop and purchased a recital ticket. The main reason I wanted to prove to myself that I could return to that house on my own terms was not because they needed me. I wouldn't be the assistants this time. The hurricane would be me. I crept into the back of the auditorium when Clara's presentation was in full flow. Her white outfit shone in the spotlight as she sat at the grand violin. But there was a problem. Her normally flawless posture was stiff, and her motions were robotic. Then I saw why Mother was acting like a puppet master, controlling her sister's performance while standing in the wings and mouthing every note. Olivia took hold of my arm amid the clapping, but I had no intention of returning backstage afterwards. She guided me in this manner, along the well-known corridors of the music school, where I had practiced with Clara for many hours. Mother's high-pitched voices rang out from the green room, piercing the walls. Clara, that was careless. What became of the middle part? We did it 100 times. I simply apologize. Apologies. Fails to win contests. Apologies. Not eligible for admission to Juilliard's kids program. Would you wish to become like Maya? Olivia, I entered the doorway. Not far behind. Similar to me. Do you mean self-sufficient? Educated in college? Colorless. Mother whirled around her face. Sitting on the violin bench, Clara appeared smaller than I had ever seen her before. You're not entitled to be here. Mom gave a hiss. I do, in fact. I took out my previous student ID. I continue to teach part-time here, aids in college funding. Before anyone could say anything, Clara's head jerked up and her eyes widened. Behind me, a man in a fancy suit materialized. Harrington, miss. From the Juilliard Selection Committee, I'm Miles Donovan. I wanted to talk about the performance of your sister. Mother's face suddenly changed to the grin of her society. Naturally, Clara would be respected. In fact, Miles seamlessly jumped in. Maya was the person I wanted to talk to. Your reputation as a teacher comes before you. What followed was a wonderful stillness. As Miles went on, I sensed that my mother's world was shifting. Our program has accepted a number of your pupils. Your strategies are out of the ordinary but work. She does not teach Clara. Mom lost her temper. She is not important. Here's where you're mistaken. Olivia moved forward. For months, Maya has been instructing Clara late at night via video conversations. Why, in your opinion, did she suddenly begin to play with genuine feeling rather than only mechanical accuracy? Mother turned to face Clara, who appeared to withdraw even further. Is this accurate? Prior to Clara's response, Miles spoke once more. We're looking for more than simply technical perfection, Miss S. Harrington. We want pupils who can feel and comprehend music. In particular, I saw the ghost of a smile on Clara's face when she saw our secret joke about that middle area, like your daughter did today. Mother wasn't done, though. This is absurd. This family was abandoned by Maya. She is not entitled to meddle in Clara's future. A fresh voice really joined in. Grandmother Eleanor, looking stunning in her trademark blue. Given that she was just assigned to our family's position on the board of directors of the music school, Maya is fully entitled. Mother's face turned crimson instead of white. You can't. I did, and I can. The silk was still wrapped around Eleanor's voice. Changes must be made, Marjorie. Let's start with our definition of family. Clara's little hands clenched into fists as she abruptly stood up. Juilliard is not a place I want to go. The room went cold. I no longer wished to play the violin. Not in this manner. Tears filled her eyes as she gazed at me. I want to be honest. Like you stated, Mom grabbed her. Clara, however, took a step back toward me. Despite the movement's modest size, its significance was profound. Miles added to the strain, though. I believe I have what I require. He gave his card to me. On Monday, give my office a call. We ought to talk more about your teaching strategies. I could feel the ground moving underfoot as he walked away. This was not retaliation, I had hoped. Something stronger was involved. Years of well-preserved facades are finally being broken by the reality. Mom was standing there. Clara reached for my hand as her idyllic life fell apart. Despite its arrival, the hurricane was not destroying everything in its path. The air was being cleared. Like ticking time bombs, the wedding invitation waited on my desk. 6 cream-colored envelopes with calligraphy on the address. Eleanor, the grandmother, had demanded it. I went for the designated one, my hands shaking. Robert Harrington and Miss S. Harrington. Miles stated from our flat doorway, "You don't have to send them. Nobody would hold you responsible." Rather than respond, I sealed the envelope. Clara's performance had been 3 years ago. Because everything was different. Or perhaps nothing had changed. It buzzed on my phone. Olivia's daily report. "Your previous room is being redecorated by Mother once more. Claims that it must be flawless for when you realize your mistake." Then came another text. "Clara inquired about being your flower girl. Mom had a tantrum." Before I could reply, the doorbell rang. Eleanor appeared abnormally pale as she stood there. "We must speak." She didn't hold off on accepting an invitation. I'm heading directly to my kitchen table. "Yesterday, your mother visited me to discuss the wedding. I felt sick to my stomach." "What was it she wanted to bargain over?" Eleanor spoke cautiously. "She is prepared to bring the entire family. Of course, on one condition. Naturally, a condition exists." I gave a sour laugh. "What is it?" "That I left the board of the music school, resigned from my teaching post, let Clara go back to school at Juilliard." The room whirled a little. "Clara no longer plays at all after 3 years. Now she does. She has been made to rehearse by your mother. Declares that it's time to repair the harm you created." Once more, my phone buzzed. It was Sophia, at least this time. Clara shut the bathroom door behind her. Can't stop sobbing. How do we proceed? Miles put his hand on my shoulder. "Perhaps we should wait, Maya." "No." I got up suddenly. "They can't take these two from me. They will either arrive as family or not. There's more," Eleanor muttered. "Your dad? He is ill. Cardiac issues. According to your mother, this may be his final opportunity to witness your marriage." It should have been comical how blatantly transparent the deception was. Rather, it made my stomach turn like a knife. My phone rang. Clara's phone number. It had been months since I heard her voice. I replied against my better judgment. "Please," she muttered. "Just follow their wishes, please. I am at my breaking point. Whatever they want, I'll play it. Be anyone they choose." Simply said, "Stop it." Her voice cracked. She went on. "Maya, everything you've constructed is being destroyed. The community concerts, the scholarship program for disadvantaged children, and the way mothers use their father's illness to exert pressure on the board. Next week, they will vote to undo everything." I glanced at Eleanor's shrewd eyes and Miles's anxious expression as I read the wedding invites. 3 years of creating a tangible product, something that benefited others. Mother was deconstructing everything in a methodical manner. "How would you respond?" Eleanor was asked. She gave a sorrowful grin. "Dear, I've already done it. I gave up family for independence 30 years ago. I'm still unsure if the expense was justified." Once more, my phone buzzed. Olivia's picture. At the violin, Clara. Her face was expressionless. Mother was standing over her, grinning in her old, domineering way. Father stood in his armchair behind them, scarcely visible, and he appeared thinner than I recalled. The request to leave tomorrow. Finally, as I had intended, I said, "And the role on the board?" Eleanor inquired. I grabbed my laptop and opened the letter of resignation I had written weeks prior. I knew that with just one click, I could put a stop to this situation for my sisters, perhaps even making amends with my parents. Rather, I shut down the laptop. "Inform Mom whether or not she is welcome to attend the wedding. Her decision. However, I'm done allowing her decisions to dictate how I live." Clara sent another SMS as Eleanor was leaving. "I'm angry with you for abandoning me here. I despise myself for wishing I had the courage to follow suit." I gazed at the message until the screen turned black, revealing my face and the empty chairs behind it that belonged to my family. I was in class in the morning when the phone came in. Grandmother Eleanor passed away as she slept. Calm. As if that made it better, they said. As if there were any way to improve it. What awaited me in the lawyer's office caught me off guard. My whole family was positioned like chessboard players. Mom and Dad. Clara was sitting on the edge of a chair, observing me with those calculating eyes, while Olivia and Sophia were cuddled together on a leather couch by the window. The lawyer started now that we were all present. Mother interrupted him, though. "Is this truly required? Any preparations may undoubtedly be managed by the immediate family. My immediate family is myself." "Silently," I said, "quicker than you've been in years." The attorney cleared his throat. "Your mother was quite particular about this meeting, Miss S. Harrington. The reading requires everyone to be there." He produced a heavy envelope. "Meyer receives the majority of the estate. The temperature in the room decreased by 10 degrees, including the places on the music school board and the family's educational trust. With one condition, he hesitated. There was a condition, of course. A condition was always present. Meyer must create a new scholarship program for siblings who are estranged from their families in order to get the fortune. It was a fragile chuckle from Mother. How fitting. There's more, the attorney went on. Clara received a letter, and Olivia and Sophia received a separate trust for their schooling. For me, Clara's head jerked up. He gave her an envelope. She opened it with shaking hands. This isn't feasible. Mom got to her feet. Eleanor was not entitled. She was perfectly entitled. Unexpectedly, Father's voice was calm, similar to what Catherine accomplished. Like smoke, the name lingered in the air. Don't, Mom cautioned. Your sister made her decision, Father went on. The same as Maya. Similar to what Sarah is attempting. Clara continued to read the letter. She was crying uncontrollably. Clara muttered that she knew. Grandma Eleanor was totally aware of my panic attacks before to performances, my desire to vanish like Maya, and the fact that I practiced until my fingers bled because I was never good enough. Clara. That's sufficient. Mom got things started. No, it isn't. Clutching the letter to her bosom, Clara got to her feet. She also left me money. Not for Juilliard, though. For medical treatment. The ensuing hush was deafening. This is over, I responded, turning to look at my mother. The control, the manipulation, the turning of us against one another. Today is the last day. You're not entitled. I am fully entitled. And I can now support it with electricity. I looked at my sisters, Olivia, Sophia. You will be moving in with Miles and me. We have already made arrangements for transfers to nearby schools. Mom became pale. You can't. She can, in fact. The attorney interrupted. She is granted full guardianship powers by the Educational Trust. The voice of Clara's mother was now menacing. My younger sister caught my attention, gazed closely at her behind her well-practiced grin and flawless posture. What Eleanor must have seen, I saw. A youngster who is afraid and wants to escape. She can choose to do it, I said quietly. Let her make the decision for once in her life. With the letter still tightly gripped, Clara slowly got to her feet. She moved toward me after taking a stride in the direction of her mother. Then, just between us, she halted. I pick myself, she muttered. In order to discover who I am without the violin and without the pressure, I decide to seek therapy. Without you telling me who I must be, she glanced at her mother. Mother picked up her handbag and made her way to the door. This is something you'll regret, you everyone. No, they won't. Still speaking quietly, Father said. He adjusted his jacket, got to his feet, and performed something I had never seen him do before. He left Mother and came near us. The attorney gave a little smile. Miss Harrington, should we talk about the specifics of that scholarship program? My father and sisters formed a shield wall around me as I sat down. Yeah, I said, seeing my mother's departure. Let's construct a new item. A year later, I saw Clara carefully and precisely cut roses in grandmother Eleanor's yard. As a release, gardening was recommended by her therapist. Something to make that didn't need to be flawless. I didn't miss the irony. Ever miss it? I inquired. The violin. She gave the subject some thought. Shears for pruning, halting in the middle of the snippet. Occasionally. But rather than the strain, I missed the music. She gave me a glance. Instead, I began creating guitar tunes. Is that acceptable? Clara, you don't need my consent. I understand, but I'd want your viewpoint. Not teacher to pupil, but sister to sister. I could hear Olivia and Sophia fighting over college applications inside the home. As he mediated their argument with the patients he had eventually located after leaving Mother, Father's voice faded away. Last month, she relocated to Boston in pursuit of a fresh start. Since Miles showed up on the doorstep with a stack of manila envelopes, none of us had heard from her. The Catherine Eleanor Harrington Scholarship for Family Reconciliation has received its first round of applications. Grandmother's final present, already giving our suffering a meaning. We had facilitated the reunion of 3 pairs of siblings. Rebuild, rethink the definition of family. Can I review them for you? Clara put down her shears and inquired. I believe I may be able to relate to what they're going through. I observed my little sister, who was now something far more important than the flawless porcelain doll my mother had created. A genuine individual with her own power and scars. In fact, I expressed my hope that you would become a permanent member of the selection committee. Olivia and you both. Her gaze expanded. Really? Really? When Sophia graduates from high school, she can take over the summer music program, if she so chooses. How about you? Silently, Clara inquired. I'm taking a step back. Miles and I are considering having our own family. The words lingered between us, laden with both terror and potential. Would I end up like my mother? Would the past happen again? I think Clara read my mind. You're not her. Firmly, she said. You were never inside. We had retrieved an old upright piano from storage, and Olivia had begun to play something on it. Something that's not classical, something unique, untamed, unrestrained, and flawed. Father's startled laugh was followed by Sophia's voice. I discovered my mother's diary, Clara stated abruptly. Since the time she was my age, her dream was to become a singer. Were you aware of that? Her parents, however, refused, claimed that it was inappropriate for a Harrington. I was unaware of that. It still clarified a lot. Nothing changed. Last week, she texted me, Clara went on, asked if I could travel to Boston to see her. Only me. I squeezed my hands uncontrollably. What were you saying? I told her that, if you accompanied me, I would consider it. She looked directly into my eyes. Either we recovered together, or we didn't. With applications tucked under his arm, Miles emerged from the porch. In 10 minutes, the first committee meeting will begin. Are you two prepared? I turned to face my sister. Really? Examined her. Under her fingernails, at the dirt, her face in the sun. The silent assurance that had taken the place of her frantic need to please. Then we heard the joyful, messy sound of family being redefined in the house behind us. Nearly. Help me with one last rosebush, Clara, I asked. As Grandma Eleanor used to say, for gardens to flourish, they require both fresh growth and roots. With a little smile on her lips, she picked up her shears. Similar to families. Similar to families. We returned to the garden together and began removing dead wood to create space for new flowers. The sound of potential was carried by Olivia's music as it floated through the open windows behind us. On the July wind. Not quite a conclusion. More akin to a fresh start, based on reality rather than fiction. In love rather than duty. In the strength that comes from overcoming adversity and working together to rebuild. It was just as Grandma Eleanor would have wished.